What if everything you know about male love is dangerously incomplete? Brace yourself. There's a hidden truth about men who truly fall in love that society refuses to tell you. They almost never show it through roses, love letters, or constant attention. Instead, they speak through haunting silences loaded with emotion, subtle acts of devotion, and secret gestures visible only to the most awakened observer. And here's the devastating trap. If you can't decode these unconscious signals, you'll mistake his soul-deep connection for indifference. You'll pull away just as he's falling for you, condemning yourself to empty relationships chasing counterfeit affection, while the man who silently adored you slips through your fingers forever. This isn't just heartbreak, it's a spiritual crisis of connection. But today, armed with Carl Jung's explosive insights into the male psyche, I'll hand you the master key to unlock these hidden signs. By the end of this revelation, you'll never question his true feelings again. And if you're one of the thousands watching this channel without subscribing, pause now, tap that button. Join those already transforming their love lives with our uncensored psychology insights, because what you'll discover next rewrites every rule you know about love. According to Carl Jung, much of human behavior is guided by the unconscious. That includes love, and what many men don't know how to express clearly, their body, their gaze, and their decisions, shout it, unwillingly. Has it happened to you that someone treated you in such a confusing way that you didn't know if they wanted you, or were just using you? Or that after losing someone, you looked back and realized there were clear signals, but you didn't see them? This video is so you won't make that mistake again. I'm going to show you 7 very specific signals that reveal he's in love, even if he doesn't tell you. And I assure you one thing, at least one of these signals you've already seen, but you didn't know how to interpret it. Pay attention. This isn't just information. It's a way to see what you previously ignored. And when you learn to see it, your love life will never be the same. Most people believe that if someone is in love, they'll show it openly. That love, as they say, can't be hidden. But Jung reminds us of a truth many ignore. Much of what we feel is repressed or disguised. And love doesn't escape that rule, especially in men. Not because they don't feel, but because they learn to protect what they feel. From a very young age, many men heard phrases like, "Don't cry, don't be weak." Men don't fall in love that fast. Those ideas become etched as a kind of emotional defense. So when they face true love, the kind that destabilizes them, makes them vulnerable, confronts them with their deepest emotions, many freeze. They don't know how to handle it, and that's where contradictory behavior is born. He looks at you like you're the most important thing in the world, but then pulls away. He worries about you but doesn't say it. He does things for you, but avoids talking about feelings. Does this sound familiar? What Jung explained about the shadow is key to understanding this. The shadow is that part of ourselves we repress, because society taught us it's not right. And for many men, loving deeply is part of that shadow. Not because loving is wrong, but because the type of love they feel makes them feel too exposed. Showing that level of affection goes against the image they feel they must project: secure, rational, self-sufficient. So they repress what they feel, hide it even from themselves, but the body doesn't lie. Small acts, long gazes, tone of voice, impulsive decisions they make without knowing why, all these are leaks from the unconscious, and that's where you must learn to look. One of the first signs he's in love but hiding it is precisely this fear of rejection. He doesn't want to confess what he feels because he fears it won't be reciprocated. He fears losing your attention, your company, your respect. He fears showing you his most sincere part and you not valuing it as he hopes. And since he can't control that possibility, he protects himself. Sometimes he even provokes you emotionally to see how you react, to test if you really care. These emotional games aren't always conscious, but behind them is a very real fear. What if she doesn't feel the same? Many men prefer to stay in doubt rather than risk losing everything. And this is where you, without realizing it, might interpret that silence or distance as lack of interest. Nothing could be further from the truth. What exists is a repressed, contained desire, waiting for a safe space to emerge. But we won't announce it with words. You'll see it in contradictions, in how he stays longer than he should, in how he remembers details about you that even you forgot saying, in how his body reacts when something affects you. That kind of emotional connection isn't manufactured. It's visceral. And though he may not dare name it, it shows. That's why, when you wonder if he really feels something, don't just look at what he says. Look at what he avoids saying. Look at what makes him nervous. Look at the moments when he seems to want to get closer but stops halfway. It's not lack of interest. It's an excess of fear. And that's where the first signal begins. When a man feels something very strong for you but simultaneously seems to pull away, it's not because he doesn't care. It's because he cares too much and doesn't know what to do with it. This doesn't mean you must force him to speak or act as you expect. It just means that if you learn to read these gestures, you'll stop misinterpreting what's happening. And in the long run, that can save you much unnecessary pain. Because love doesn't always arrive wrapped in pretty words or obvious displays. Sometimes it arrives as a contradiction, a doubt, an awkward gesture. But if you know how to look, you'll recognize it. There's a way of loving that doesn't speak, doesn't declare itself, doesn't even hint. It only manifests in concrete actions, often small but constant. Jung said the unconscious expresses itself through symbols and acts. And this is one of those times. When a man is in love but can't or won't say it, he'll most likely show it through care. Not the superficial care of someone who wants to be liked, but the deep care of someone concerned for your well-being without seeking recognition. Has it happened that he remembers you slept badly and asks the next day if you're better? Or that he avoids talking to you when he knows you're stressed, but later appears with a solution to what worried you? Or that he offers to help you with something without you asking, even if it makes him change his own plans? That kind of behavior doesn't come from a desire to please, but from authentic concern for you. But the curious thing is that often this care is so subtle, so discreet, that it goes unnoticed, or worse, is interpreted as simple kindness, as if he were just a polite or attentive person. But he's not. That way of caring, anticipating your needs, preventing you from feeling bad, is a direct signal he feels something strong. This pattern has deep roots. Many men grew up learning that loving translates to protecting, and protecting for them doesn't mean giving romantic speeches. It means solving, caring, observing in silence, and acting when no one sees. Jung spoke of the protector archetype, that internal energy activated when true affection is felt for someone. When that archetype awakens, the man begins to act without overthinking. He doesn't plan it, doesn't calculate it. He just does it. If you're in danger, he reacts. If he sees you sad, he becomes uneasy. If he knows you might need something, he anticipates. All this might seem insignificant if what you expect are words. But if you learn to observe with a different perspective, you'll see that silent care is actually one of the strongest forms of love. A silent, in-love man shows himself in those unromantic gestures others wouldn't notice, like taking you home so you don't walk alone, even if he lives in the opposite direction, like sending you a message when he knows you had a medical appointment just to ask if everything went well, like fixing something you mentioned once wasn't working, like studying your schedules, your habits, and your emotions without saying anything, just to not interrupt. When you're tired, or to approach when he notices you're more receptive. That kind of care can't be faked or improvised. It's born from a very specific place, the desire for you to be well, even if he isn't with you. And here comes the strongest part. Often this care also leads him to pull away. Not because he doesn't love you, but because he feels that right now he can't give you what you need, so he decides to disappear a little. Not because he no longer cares, but because he cares so much he doesn't want to fail you. And since he doesn't know how to live up to what he believes you deserve, he chooses to stay on the sidelines. Jung would say this is a struggle between the conscious self and the unconscious. One part wants to get closer, the other protects itself. And in the middle, there's you trying to understand what all this confusing behavior means. That's why it's so important to stop looking only at the obvious. If someone cares for you in silence, worries about you, even if he doesn't say it, if his way of being present is more practical than emotional. Don't dismiss him. He might be more in love than you imagine. He just hasn't found the words yet. And not all men succeed. Some never do. But that doesn't mean the love isn't there. It means it's trapped behind layers of fear, pride, past traumas, or simply poor emotional education. Sometimes the most sincere love doesn't shout, isn't published, isn't declared. It just manifests as someone who's always there without you, having to ask. Someone who does what he can, in his own way, for you to be well. One of the most bewildering and painful signs of a man who's in love but doesn't show it is his contradictory behavior. Today he seeks you. Tomorrow he distances himself. One day he seems interested in everything you say. The next, he responds coldly, or even acts indifferent. You feel connected, then ignored, and that emotional roller coaster isn't random. Jung would explain this as an internal struggle between the conscious self and unconscious forces pushing him toward you, while simultaneously pushing him to flee. It's not about manipulation or playing games. It's an internal fracture, leaving him trapped between what he feels and what he believes he can handle. When a man falls deeply in love, his emotional structure shakes, especially if he wasn't looking to fall in love or has unresolved past wounds. You appear with your way of being, your presence, your silences, and something inside him activates. But it's not automatic. Not all love awakens bravery. Sometimes it awakens insecurity, because for many men, loving implies losing control, letting another person in, seeing them vulnerable, touching them emotionally where no one else has. And if they're not prepared for that, their most common reaction will be sabotage. Not because they don't love you, but because they don't know how to love without feeling in danger. This pattern of approach and withdrawal is deeply human. The unconscious desire for connection clashes with the unconscious fear of being hurt. And so he calls you with his attitude, but then withdraws. He opens up a little, then shuts down. He tells you something intimate, then acts like nothing happened. The problem isn't you, your lack of interest, or how you respond. It's his emotional inability to sustain intimacy when it becomes real, because that confronts him with everything he doesn't know how to handle about himself. Jung wrote about the concept of projection, when we attribute to others what we don't accept in ourselves. In this context, a man who's in love but pulls away may be projecting all his unresolved fears onto you. He fears you'll reject him, hurt him, abandon him like someone did before. So every time he gets close and feels he's emotionally surrendering, his mind panics. He tells himself he's going too fast, that you don't feel the same, that he's exposing himself without guarantees. So he pulls back, distances himself to regain control. And you're left confused, wondering if you did something wrong. You did nothing wrong. But if you don't understand this dynamic, you might start chasing him, demanding clarity, entering an emotional struggle where one runs and the other chases, and that wears you down. That's why it's so important to observe what happens with detachment, not to justify it, but to understand where his behavior comes from. Often he himself doesn't know why he acts as he does. He just feels something overwhelms him, and his way of protecting himself is silence, distance, feigned indifference. And here's the key point. This contradiction is a signal. It's not a mistake, not coincidence, not simply immaturity. It's evidence that what he feels for you destabilizes him. He doesn't have the emotional tools to handle it, so the impulse to get closer is always followed by a defensive retreat, as if afraid to feel too close, to lose control, to let something so beautiful become painful. Because in his mind, love and pain go hand in hand. Maybe because that's how it was in his personal history. Yes, this behavior can be very damaging if repeated long-term, but understanding it doesn't mean accepting it forever. It means recognizing that if he contradicts himself so much with you, it's because he feels something real. And sometimes that's the first thing you need to know to make a decision. You're not imagining things. You're not exaggerating. That constant approach and withdrawal is the emotional footprint of a man who loves you but doesn't yet know how. There's something that never lies: the eyes. No matter how much someone tries to hide what they feel, their gaze always gives them away. They can fake it with words, gestures, even distance. But if you observe them when they don't know you're looking or when they let their guard down for an instant, you'll notice the truth. There's something in how they look at you that can't be disguised. Jung said the unconscious always finds a way to surface, and here it does so through the eyes. Everything is there. Desire, tenderness, fear, connection. That's where what he can't say lives. One of the clearest signs he's more in love than he shows is how he watches you. I don't mean a superficial or seductive look. I mean that gaze that lingers longer than necessary, that seeks nothing specific, just being there watching you. A gaze that stays on your gestures, your pauses, your silences, that sometimes seems lost, but is actually completely focused on you, as if looking at you makes him forget the rest of the world. That gaze isn't casual or distracted. It's pure, emotional connection. The interesting thing is that often when he realizes you've noticed, he quickly looks away, gets uncomfortable, makes excuses. But you already saw it. You already saw there was something more. Because eyes don't just look, they reveal. And how he looks at you says far more than everything he's said so far. Have you ever caught him looking at you in silence, as if analyzing something he doesn't fully understand himself? Or noticed he pays attention to you even when others are around? And when you look back, he gets nervous or acts like nothing's happening. That's not indifference. It's vulnerability. Men who don't know how to express what they feel often hide behind ambiguous attitudes, but their gaze betrays them. Because when someone feels something real, their attention involuntarily focuses on that person, and that attention manifests in how he looks. At you when he thinks you don't see, how his expression lights up when he sees you arrive, how his eyes darken if he sees you're sad. Subtle, yes, but if you learn to observe, you'll start noticing those moments when his body language says what his mouth silences. Sometimes that gaze also appears right when you're pulling away. When he feels he might lose you, his eyes say it all. And that's where many women feel a strong contradiction. If he doesn't want me, why does he look at me like that? The answer is he does want you, but doesn't know how to handle it. And that internal struggle is etched on his face, in his eyes that seek you even though his pride tells him he shouldn't, in how he keeps an eye on you without approaching. Because repressed love doesn't disappear, it just changes form. And one of the most powerful ways it expresses itself is through the gaze. This part can be the most painful, because when you see everything he feels in how he looks at you, but he still doesn't speak, doesn't get closer, doesn't act, you feel a mix of hope and frustration. Part of you feels seen, loved, understood. Another part feels alone, waiting for something that may never come. But you're not crazy. You're not imagining things. You're reading real signals. And though not everything felt becomes a story, it deserves to be acknowledged. Even if he doesn't say it, doesn't confirm it, tries to hide it. That gaze says what his soul feels. Now I want to ask you something, and your answer matters a lot to me. Have you ever felt someone loved you just by how they looked at you, even if they never said it? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read you, and maybe many others will identify with you. Sometimes sharing what we feel helps us understand it better. Love, in its purest form, often carries a need for self-protection. This doesn't mean there's no real desire for connection, but that the fear of rejection and pain is greater than the impulse to surrender. This is where one of the most confusing manifestations of a man who loves you but doesn't show it comes in: emotional distance. This is one of the clearest forms of self-defense. He acts distant, cold, or even indifferent, not because he doesn't care, but because he cares too much. When a man is deeply in love, he can become very vulnerable, and vulnerability, for many, is terrifying. If he's suffered in the past, had experiences that scarred him, or simply doesn't know how to handle his emotions, his immediate reaction will be to protect himself. This self-defense manifests in his behavior. He may seem distant, as if not involved, as if uninterested. He pulls away, avoids deep conversations, hides behind an emotional wall, as if saying, "Don't get closer than I'm willing to allow." And all this, paradoxically, is a sign of how much you matter to him. Often, in these cases, the person who's in love but doesn't show it feels that if they surrender too much, they could lose control. Emotional closeness could do them more harm than good. It may be a way to protect themselves from pain before it happens, anticipating rejection, vulnerability, the possibility of being hurt. The man who loves you but keeps distance acts this way, not because he doesn't feel the same, but because his greatest fear is losing himself in something so big he doesn't know how to handle. What he doesn't see is that this distancing is itself an act of insecurity. One of Carl Jung's most powerful phrases is, "What you resist persists." And this behavior of coldness or distance, instead of protecting him, only sinks him deeper into his internal fears. The more he pulls away, the more the desire for closeness grows. But his defense keeps operating, and that internal struggle between what he feels and what he fears makes him a contradictory being. The distancing isn't the end, but it is a signal of how deep his fear is. Fear that you'll realize what he feels, fear of losing control, fear of being exposed before you. This is one of the subtlest ways to love, while also being the most damaging. What happens here is that, feeling vulnerable, he pulls away for fear that his vulnerability will be rejected. This distance creates a paradox. The more he pulls away, the closer he is to what he truly wants. This behavior can be an emotional trial by fire for the person waiting for a clear signal of love. And if you're that person, you know this can be heartbreaking, because you're caught between the signals of affection he shows indirectly, in his gaze, his small gestures of affection, and his apparent lack of interest. Nothing is more confusing than a man who seems to pull away just when you need him closest. But in reality, his struggle is internal. He pulls away because he's afraid, not because he doesn't care. And that fear is so powerful he sometimes doesn't know how to overcome it. That's why, when you feel him pulling away, don't take it as a signal of rejection. Take it for what it is, a form of defense against what he doesn't know how to handle. And if you want to understand if he's truly in love, observe what happens when you leave, when you pull away. What he does in that moment will be revealing. This kind of emotional distancing may last longer than you'd like, but don't interpret it as disinterest. The emotional distortion he experiences isn't a reflection of what he feels, but of what he fears. The distance is a silent scream of, "I love you, but I don't know how to handle this love." If you understand that, you'll know he's seeking a way to overcome his own fear, to open up without losing control. Men, like everyone, have their own emotional language. Often it's not verbal, not even in words. It's subtle, imperceptible at first glance. But it's actually what most reveals what they truly feel. Jung spoke of the importance of gestures and symbols in the human psyche. And what many don't know is that these gestures, those almost imperceptible movements, can say more about their feelings than any declaration of love. Have you ever noticed those small gestures he has toward you? That smile that escapes him when you talk, even if he tries to hide it. That way he leans a little closer when listening to you, as if wanting to be nearer without it showing. Or that time he offered to help you with something small without thinking, just because he cared. Those gestures aren't random or coincidences. They're symbols of his connection with you, even if he doesn't say it aloud. What's fascinating is these gestures aren't just courtesy or formalities. There's something deeper behind them. When a man is in love but doesn't show it clearly, his love translates into actions. Sometimes words aren't enough, or he doesn't know how to say what he feels, but his gestures say it all. It could be something as simple as touching your arm while talking to you, or maintaining prolonged eye contact, seeking your approval or acceptance. It could be constant concern for your well-being, even if he doesn't express it openly. Each of these gestures reflects what he's feeling internally. Have you ever noticed how he behaves when he sees you a little sad or overwhelmed? Those small attempts to comfort you, to make you feel better without saying anything, they're clear signals his love is present. He isn't verbalizing it, but it's there, manifested in his actions. Sometimes these gestures feel like relief, as if for a brief moment, love materialized into something tangible. It's curious how people who don't express their emotions verbally often communicate more through their acts than their words. This can be frustrating for those seeking clearer or more direct answers, but if you learn to read these gestures, you'll understand they are as valuable as any word. Don't deceive yourself thinking they're trivial actions. Every gesture has emotional weight. Every gesture is a small window to the soul. The important thing is not to let the lack of words make you doubt what you see. Love isn't always shown, obviously. Sometimes it's found in small details, a touch on the back to reassure you, an effort to share something he likes with you, or even a change in his behavior when you're near, as if he tried to be a better person just by being in your presence. These gestures, though unspoken, are powerful declarations. He may not say, "I love you" every day, but those gestures are saying it for him. If you look closely, you're not just seeing isolated acts. You're seeing a pattern of behavior indicating affection, care, and a deep emotional connection. These small gestures speak a language often far more reliable than empty words. The key here is not to underestimate what isn't said. Gestures and actions speak for themselves. Have you ever stopped to think how many small gestures you've received from him without recognizing them as signals of love? Maybe it's time to open your eyes to those little demonstrations of affection that go unnoticed. In the end, love isn't always shown grandly, but in the repetition of small things. If you've noticed these small gestures, I want to hear from you. What are the little gestures that have shown you someone loves you, even if they don't say it openly? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. I'd love to know your experience. And if you haven't noticed them, perhaps now is the moment to start observing more closely.